Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. This is Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. Good evening. It is 10 o'clock p.m. here in Calgary, Alberta. It's Tuesday night, March 22nd. I'm happy to be here. This is Child Abuse Prevention and Human Rights Abuse Prevention is up to us. We're on for 30 minutes, and the chat room is open there. If anybody would like to hang out in the chat room, that's fine. Tonight I want to continue talking about a PDF that I found, and it's got some good information. It's sort of a world report. It's a look at the world situation on child abuse and neglect. And so I got this PDF from the Child Welfare Information Gateway, and they have tons and tons of info on there. If you're looking for any particular topic, you can go to their publications, you can go to their library, and you can type in, alphabetically anything that you're looking for, and it will pull up all the stuff that they have in their library regarding whatever it is that you're searching for. So it's really good information. And so, thanks everybody for being here. I appreciate it. I'm not a counselor or therapist or anything like that. I'm just a private citizen paying to do my own shows. I'm talking about abuse, and I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. I've been doing these shows since November 2009. I had a lot of people tuning in. I really appreciate everybody who's taking the time to listen to my shows. Probably seems repetitive, but I just want to speak out against child abuse as long as I can, and raise awareness and promote education regarding child abuse, and also be a voice for survivors out there. So I do my morning show as well in the mornings, and one child abuse survivor to another, and then also on the weekends I have some other shows. So I just thought, well, as long as I'm on Blog Talk Radio, I may as well just make full use of it, because I'm paying to do these shows, right? And I really can't afford it, but I'm doing it anyway. And so we got to talk about this stuff. If we're going to see any change in this world, if we're going to see any progress made, it's going to have to be talked about. And I'm so thankful just to be one more voice, along with everybody else out here who is doing something to help make this world a better place for children. And 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago, I was sitting on the couch thinking, oh, isn't it so nice? Look at all these people doing all this great work. And I wasn't thinking I could get involved. I was sitting there thinking, wow, I'm so happy to see all these people doing all this great work. Just people with big hearts, who care about children and want to make this thing happen, and stop child abuse and help save children's lives all around the world, even, from other things, for instance, lack of clean drinking water and malnutrition, diseases, childhood diseases, just the whole thing, right? And I really never thought I could get involved. It didn't occur to me that I could get involved, and until about 4 years ago. So I'm glad to be able to be a voice and to do what I can within my own capabilities. I have to work full time. My sweetheart's terminally ill. In the meantime, I'm a newly published writer, so a new writer, really extremely busy. And but I like to do these shows mainly because I like to be a voice for these children out here, and to be a voice standing up for child rights and human rights, and speaking out against abuse of all types, right? So thanks everybody for tuning in. And the topics of abuse are very sensitive, so if you think that the show might bother you, you have to turn it off. It is your own discretion to listen to any of my shows, right? I post a discretionary warning on all of my shows. I'm talking about abuse. It's a very sensitive topic, and it's I don't sugarcoat it. I just tell it like it is. And so some people may find the information a little bit scary, you know what I mean, and just not want to hear about it. So it is your discretion. So if you think this show might bother you, you have to turn it off. Young people under the age of 18, I ask that you have permission to listen to my shows. Have a parent or caregiver listen to the show with you to make sure it's something that you're age appropriately that you should be listening to, because I don't know how young the people are who are listening to my shows, right? So this is very important to me, because I'm all about protecting children. And so you need to learn how to protect yourself. Keep yourself safe online. If you're a young person and you're listening to this, under the age of 18, you make sure that your parents or caregiver, somebody who's looking after you, knows what you're doing online, and learn how to keep yourself safe. It's really easy. You can do it in a short matter of time. Just read the information out there. Type into your browser, Internet Safety for Children, Online Safety for Children, excuse me, and learn how to keep yourself safe when you're in a chat room or in those gaming, whatever those things are. I don't know. I'm not really up on this stuff that kids are doing, nowadays. But I know that they're online, and I know that there's child sexual predators and pedophiles all over the place online and out in the the real world, not just the virtual world. So children, they need protection. And so if you're a young person listening to this show, you make sure that you learn how to protect yourself online at all times, keep yourself safe, keep your family safe, and pass the information on to your friends so that they don't become a victim of a child sexual predator or a pedophile. You do not want that. Let me tell you. So keep yourself safe, right? So we're going to get into this article. This is called Chapter 3. This is the name of the PDF. Child abuse and neglect by parents and other caregivers. We've been talking about this for a few nights already. We were looking at it last week on Tuesday, I believe, for Tuesday and Thursday, so last week as well. So we'll finish this up pretty soon, but there was a couple things that I wanted to draw attention to in this PDF. This is a world view. This is a world report. And so they're looking, it's a world report on violence and health, right? So it's not just North America. But I just think that some of the information it's all very good information, right? But some of it's just good to draw attention to. And that this particular section of this PDF, page 9 of this PDF, there's what are the risk factors for child abuse and neglect. So in North America, there's a whole, lot of information out there about what are risk factors for child abuse and neglect, right? For North America, but worldwide, it's interesting to take a look at this issue worldwide. Because things are different in other countries, different cultures, different belief systems, not a lot of support, a lack of resources, and just a traditional way of bringing up a family. And so there's always these issues, these underlying issues, And in North America, we've all, defined by law what is abuse, what is neglect. And but in many countries, they haven't done that. And so they haven't quite a few of them have, actually, but they don't uphold it. They have it written down in the law books. It's written in the books, the child rights, along the convention on the treaty, on the rights of the child and all this, and they have that, but they don't uphold it. So that's the thing. People are still getting away in other countries with horrific abuse. You know what I mean? And here in North America, at least, it's punishable by law, and so it's great. I love it, and I think that I'd like to see this worldwide. I really think that we need stiffer penalties myself, and I think that we need the governments of all the countries around the world need to send a message to people who are abusing children and make an example out of, the next generation of abusers. Too bad, so sad, so sorry for them that they would have to be the example. But the government, I seriously believe this because, we have to deter people from doing these horrific things to children, right? Children are not put here to abuse. They're not here to mistreat. They're not here to sexually use. Children were not born and brought into the world for these purposes. There are a lot of people out there who believe that's the case. Lots and lots of people sexually use their children, and lots and lots of people sexually use other people's children, and they believe it's perfectly fine. Just talk to a few of them, like you see their interviews out there. They're talking publicly, That's interesting to me that they would even dare to come forward and say something like that in public, But it's because they have rights, of course, more rights than the child, right? And so that's the whole issue, right? They can do whatever they want to the child, get away with it, and where's the child's rights? Oh, well, they might do a few years in prison or something. Big whoop-de-doo. That child's got to live with that for the rest of their lives. I don't know. Have you ever been sodomized? That's a good question, right? Have you ever been raped? That's a really good question to ask yourself. Have you ever been sexually molested and abused by somebody, whether it's a stranger or whether it's a family member? That's another really good question to ask yourself as far as child sexual abuse goes, right? If you have, then you would know, right? And if you haven't, then you wouldn't know. So, I was sexually abused as a child, so I know what this is like. This is really, it's just horrific. So worldwide, countries really have to step up to the plate and start, doing something about this situation. And, we really have to get education out to the young people. That's what I think. Because these young people out here today are going to be the next set of abusers, right? Not all of them, a large portion of them. So that's very sad. So many of them will go on to abuse their children. Some will get busted, some won't. Some will just slip through the cracks and be allowed to get away with what they did to their child or to somebody else's child. But there'll be a whole bunch that will be busted, right? They'll do time. it's like, why? Why are people doing this to children? This is a question I ask myself all the time. I was abused as a child. I can't figure out why my parents did what they did to us as a family. And that's my morning show, One Child Abuse Survivor to Another. I mean, the reasons for it. They had. I mean, there was it's talked about. It's in the books. The reasons why people abuse their children. In the back of my mind, I'm this. I was their child, and I still can't figure out why they did what they did to me, and why they would think that it was okay. You know what I mean? It's like I don't understand abusers' minds. I just don't get how people can, I could see somebody accidentally hurting a child and, or even, over disciplining, becoming a little bit harsh in their discipline and hurting their child a little bit and thinking, "Oh my God, look what I've done. I've got to find a better way. I can't hurt my child." You know what I mean? But people don't care, and so they just do what they do to their children. And, I can't imagine anybody sexually using a child thinking that is okay. Right? Adults should be having sex with adults, and children should not be having sex. As far as I'm concerned. You know what I mean? They should be allowed to grow up, and explore their own sexuality within their own good time when they're comfortable with it. And, they should not have an adult forcing themselves on them or trying to or coercing them and manipulating them. Right? Absolutely ridiculous that people think that that's okay, right? No, it's not. It's not okay. Never will be okay. It never was okay. And I'm so glad that the law says it's not okay. I'm willing to stand up and support the law. Thank God for the laws. I'm so happy about that. So there we go. So what are the risk factors for child abuse and neglect? A variety of theories and models have been developed to explain the occurrence of abuse within families. And the most widely adopted explanatory model is the ecological model. And they said, as applied to child abuse and neglect, the ecological model considers a number of factors, including the characteristics of the individual child and his or her family, those of the caregiver or perpetrator, and they have a table, and you can look through there and sort of see what they have tables and all kinds of information on this particular PDF. The nature of the local communities, the social, economic, and cultural environment. There's so many things, factors involved, right? The limited research in this area suggests that some factors are fairly consistent over a range of countries in conferring risk. It is important to note, though, that these factors, which are listed below, may be only statistically associated and not causally linked, right? Factors increasing a child's vulnerability, and they said a number of studies, mostly from the developed world. That's the developed world. That's the countries that have been developed and for a long time, right? Not countries that are undeveloped or underdeveloped, right? So that they don't have the funds to do the studies. They don't have the infrastructure to do the studies, right? Whereas the developed countries and countries that are really developing at a pretty high rate, they're starting to work these things into their systems so that they can, track this stuff, right? But many of these underdeveloped countries just don't have the people, the manpower, the money, the funding, the people reporting. It takes a whole lot of people to get these studies done. And they said that so a number of the studies, mostly from the developed world, have suggested that certain characteristics of children increase the risk for abuse, and that is there's many of them. There's age, and I'm just going to scroll through. There's age. There's sex, the sex of the child, whether that's a female or a male child. Special characteristics, caregiver and family characteristics, and family size and household composition, family structure and resources, personality and behavioral characteristics, and prior history of abuse. And then there's violence in the home. That's another issue. Then they list here community factors such as poverty, social capita, societal factors, just all kinds of issues, and factors, that would increase the child to be at risk for abuse. There's so many. I mean, in a number of these things, in any combination, it sets the child up at an increased risk for abuse, right? They said for age, vulnerability to child abuse, whether physical, sexual, or through neglect, depends in part on the child's age. Fatal cases of physical abuse are found largely among young infants. So these are the studies that are out there. This is the studies that are done. In reviews of infant deaths in Fiji, Finland, Germany, and Senegal, for instance, the majority of victims were less than 2 years of age. And they said young children are also at risk of non-fatal physical abuse, though the peak ages for such abuse vary from country to country. So they said, for example, rates of non-fatal physical abuse peak for children at 3 to 6 years of age in China, at 6 to 11 years of age in India, and between 6 and 12 years of age in the United States. So sexual abuse rates, on the other hand, tend to rise after the onset of puberty, with the highest rates occurring during adolescence. Sexual abuse, however, can also be directed at young children. I guess they just want to throw that in there so people would know. And they said sex, depending on which sex the child is, whether it's a boy or girl. They said in most countries, girls are at higher risk than boys for infanticide, sexual abuse, educational and nutritional neglect, and forced prostitution. Findings from several international studies show rates of sexual abuse to be 1.5 to 3 times higher among girls than boys. Globally, more than 130 million children between the ages of 6 and 11 years are not in school, 60% of whom are girls. In some countries, girls are either not allowed to receive schooling or else are kept at home to help look after their siblings or to assist the family economically by working. They said male children appear to be at greater risk of harsh physical punishment in many countries, although girls are at an increased risk for infanticide in many places. It is not clear why boys are subjected to harsher physical punishment in many countries, they said here. It may be that such punishment is seen as a preparation for adult roles and responsibilities, or that boys are considered to need more physical discipline. Clearly, the wide cultural gaps that exist between different societies with respect to the role of women and the values attached to male and female children could account for many of these differences. So they said here special characteristics like premature infants, twins, handicapped children have been shown to be at increased risk for physical abuse and neglect. And there are conflicting findings from studies on the importance of mental retardation as a risk factor. It is believed that low birth weight, prematurity, illness, or physical or mental handicaps in the infant or child interfere with attachment and bonding and may make the child more vulnerable to abuse. However, these characteristics do not appear to be major risk factors for abuse when other factors are considered, such as parental and societal variables. So this is caregiver and family characteristics. Research has linked certain characteristics of the caregiver as well as environment to child abuse and neglect. And while some factors, including demographic ones, are related to variation in risk, others are related to the psychological and behavioral characteristics of the caregiver or to aspects of the family environment that may compromise parenting and lead to child maltreatment. And so, it's really the family structure and resources to talk about. Physically abusive parents are more likely to be young, single, poor, and unemployed, and to have less education than their non-abusing counterparts. In both developing and industrialized countries, poor, young, single mothers are among those at greatest risk for using violence towards their children. In the United States, for instance, single mothers are 3 times more likely to report using harsh physical discipline than mothers in 2-parent families. Similar findings have been reported in Argentina. It's quite interesting. That's not the case for a lot of people. There are older people that do abuse children, and I'm just a perfect example of that. My mother was 38 when she had me, so by the time she was abusing me really from a small child, but by the time the severe physical abuse came about, she was 48 years old. So she was, and then into her 50s. So the abuse just continued on. But she was an older woman. Not all young mothers abuse their children, right? They're just saying that it's a risk factor because they're probably stressed out. Young, single, mothers who are trying to cope and trying to make ends meet may not have grown up in all that great of a home either, may have a lot of stress and a lot of problems. There may be some substance abuse in there. They may have been abused, like we're saying. They may, any number of things, may just not understand healthy parent-child relationships. They might not understand the development of a child, the proper, development of a child and how their children are going to behave and act at a certain age. It's very important for parents to understand that stuff. A lot of parents put a lot of, they get angry with their children because their children are not doing what they want them to do. And really, at age-appropriate levels, at certain ages, children are just not prepared to do these things that parents and caregivers want them to do. And so it's important for the parents to know not to take that out on the child, but to, get some help, right? If you're struggling and you think, I can't cope, you don't have to hurt your children. No, abuse is a choice. I hope everybody knows this. People choose to abuse their children. It's not something they're forced to do. They choose to do it, and it's just a bad choice they're making. It's a wrong choice on behalf of that child. And there's no reason for why a parent shouldn't be able to stop themselves and say, look, I don't want to hurt my child, so I'm going to take a time out, and then I'm going to get some help, right? Because, there's so many parents who just I don't know. They just feel that there's no help. They just don't know there's any help, or I don't see how you could not know that now in today's world with the information technology, the information that's out there. Everybody knows that there's everything out there, right? So now there's not an excuse anymore. But back, 60s and 70s and 80s even, I could see parents saying, not necessarily knowing where to get the help. But nowadays, there's no excuse, right? I mean, information is everywhere. And even if you don't have a computer, you can usually use one at the library, you know what I mean? I can see rural people, and especially around the world. Like there's people around the world, obviously, that don't have the same resources that we have over here in North America and parts of, Western Europe and certain parts of the world, right? And so, there's lots of countries that don't have the same types of access to resources. But here in North America, there's just no excuse. Everybody has access. If you don't, you just go to the library and you do some research, But a lot of people don't care. They want to take their frustration and anger out on their children. I was a convenient punching bag for my mother. I was the last child born. She hated me. I was born out of rape. She told me she didn't want me. I was born out of rape, and she hated my guts. And I was a really convenient punching bag for her. She could take all of her frustrations out on me, and she could yell at me and scream at me, and then she'd feel better, right? I would feel a lot worse, let me tell you. But she'd feel a lot better, and then she would just go do her thing. It was like a real convenient punching bag. Well, a lot of parents are like that, and they abuse their children, and they, of course, they make it look like it's the child's fault. If you weren't doing this, I wouldn't have to do this to you. Or if you weren't misbehaving, or you weren't so bad, I wouldn't have to do. They of course blame on the child. But really, what it is they're just taking their frustrations out on the child. There's no excuse for abuse. There's no excuse for hurting a child ever. And even sadly enough, even on accidents, that's what I'm always talking about. This is harsh enough when a parent accidentally hurts their child. And of course, most normal people feel really bad about that. They wouldn't want to hurt their child. They'd be like, "Oh my God, look what I just did. It was an accident. I didn't mean to hurt my child." And they would feel so bad. You know what I mean? And you would know it. They would show it. And they would love that child. And they'd be like, "I'm so sorry." And but just to lash out and intentionally beat your child or abuse your child, burn your child, stab your child, do these horrific things to your children, lock them in closets, tie them up, whatever. People are doing these crazy things to their kids. And be able to justify it in their own minds. Well, they deserve it. Well, they're just bad. Or, my child's just horrible. I had to do that. And, no, there's no excuse for that. There's no reason for that. I'm going to continue to speak out about this. I'm telling you, I hope I get to go worldwide. I really do. This is so incredibly wrong. I don't mind standing up and saying it. It's got to stop. And it's not going to stop unless people get involved. We all have to become a voice. We all have to be aware of what's going on and make these changes for these poor kids out here. This is absolutely ridiculous. And it shouldn't even be happening in North America. $105 billion is being spent in the United States alone every year. $105 billion. You want to know where some of your money's going? Because of child abuse. It's not going to stop child abuse or to prevent child abuse. $105 billion every year is spent in the United States because of child abuse. Why not spend another $700 billion and stop child abuse? That's what I say. Reach these young kids. Get the programs into the schools. Healthy parent-child relationships, and not a 2-week course. We're talking these kids should have to take this all the way through school, so that by the time they graduate, and they get up into the upper grades, grade 12 or whatever, and they're getting ready to graduate, they will completely understand a healthy parent-child relationship, nonviolent, ways of handling situations, and that child abuse is wrong and that's against the law. And that if they are caught and busted, they will go to jail. And that there's other ways to cope. They don't have to hurt their children. They don't have to hurt their child. There's just there's so many things that needs to be done. And without people getting involved, it's not going to happen, right? That's why it's so important that we all get involved. And I know, people do eventually find something that is means something to them enough to where they will get involved. And because I was abused as a child, I could no longer sit on the couch. I thought, why am I sitting on the couch when I know what this is like? And I'm a secondhand victim of domestic violence. Watching my parents, annihilate each other. I know what that's like as a secondhand victim. So I thought, why am I sitting on the couch when I know what all of this stuff is all about? And why am I not doing something? And at least being a voice out here. This is about all I can do right now. Like I said, I don't even have time. I don't have time to go to school. I don't have money to go to school, and so therefore I was going to school actually for a while. I had to drop the course because I didn't have any more money. So, I work full time, and like I said, my sweetheart's terminally ill. I've got minimal, limited time, but the time that I do have, I like to be a voice to speak out against abuse of all kinds, especially child abuse, and to be a voice. So, you do what you can in your own areas to make sure that, that you're doing something. I mean, even one day a month, I would say it's good, right? If everyone was doing something, it certainly makes a big difference, right? So they said abusive parents may also be uninformed and have unrealistic expectations about child development. Research has found that abusive parents show greater irritation and annoyance in response to their children's mood and behavior, and that they are less supportive, affectionate, playful, and responsive to their children, and that they are more controlling and hostile. Prior history of abuse is an issue. Studies have shown that parents maltreated as children are at higher risk of abusing their own children, and that's true in North America as well. It's not always the case. Not everyone who's been abused would go on to abuse their child or other children. Lots of people break the silence, break the cycle. That's that whole break the cycle, right? The breaking the cycle of abuse, and that's very important. Lots of people do, and there's so many people out here who I know who were abused as children who are awesome parents. And I have my good friend Gypsy Witch here with me. Thanks a lot for being here. I really appreciate it. That's my good friend from Australia. And it's the breaking the cycle, right? Not everyone who's been abused will go on to abuse their children, right? But some do. My parents were prime examples of that. That's why I'm speaking out. That's why I thought, I'm going public with my story. I want to be one more set of information out here for people who, of what happened, because it's just one more set of information for people to, understand the dynamics of what happens, when children are abused and they don't break the cycle and they get into these abusive marriages and then they continue the abuse on, they pass the abuse on, even after being brought up on charges. Did it change them? No. I mean, this is the whole issue. They were a prime example of what can happen, and it doesn't always happen, but it's sort of one of the cases where it did happen. And so, it's really sad. It's unfortunate. There's so many kids here suffering through this right now all around the world, not just in North America. That's why I like this report. It's a world report on violence and health and, child abuse, right, and neglect. So it's just important that we do, know that this is happening, right? There's violence in the home. That's a huge issue. They said that in a recent study in India, the occurrence of domestic violence in the home doubled the risk of child abuse. Among known victims of child abuse, 40% or more have also reported domestic violence in the home. They said, in fact, the relationship may be even stronger since many agencies charged with protecting children do not routinely collect data on other forms of violence in families. And they said other characteristics, stress and social isolation of the parent, have also been linked to child abuse and neglect. It is believed that stress resulting from job loss, loss of income, health problems, or other aspects of the family environment can heighten the level of conflict in the home and the ability of members to cope or find support. And they said those better able to find social support may be less likely to abuse children, even when other known risk factors are present. So in a case control study in Buenos Aires, Argentina, for instance, children living in single-parent families were at significantly greater risk for abuse than those in two-parent families. The risk for abuse was lower, though, among those who were better able to gain access to social support. Just having some support, right? And a lot of parents are isolated, and they just don't even know they can get help. They don't even know that there's help out there. So many people still don't, right? And it's very, very sad because they could get some help. There's lots and lots of good help out there for people. I ran across a lot of stuff. Check out Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, and that's my favorite website, and I guess I'm a bit biased. But the thing is there's some great information on there for parents who are struggling. It's under the resources tab. It's under the child abuse tab. You can scroll down to the bottom, click on the child abuse info tab, and scroll down to the bottom, and there's a whole page of links and resources for parents who may be struggling and just not able to cope and don't know where to turn, and want some support, for peer-to-peer support from other parents and, to get some ideas on how to cope with the stress and whatnot. So make sure that you do that. If you need some information, get a hold of me on Blog Talk Radio. I usually try to get back to people right away. If you need any of the resources or information that I have, get a hold of me. At some point, it was suggested to me by my friend to, write down all the links and whatnot. I could go back and do that pretty much. I know the material that I've used for all of my shows. I've done over 600 shows now. So, but the material is good stuff. So if anybody needs any information, please get a hold of me. And you have a great night, everybody. I'll be back on Thursday morning and Thursday night again, and as well as Dreamcatchers Talk Radio here on Blog Talk Radio. And so have a good couple of days until we see you next time. Take care.